We'll get this done in 15 total.
We should have ordered dinner, guys.
Excuse me, is there a handheld microphone?
Yeah. It's coming.
I don't need it. Second.
My God.
Good evening. My name is Tucker Gibbs. Law office is at 3835 Utopia Court in Coconut Grove, and I'm here tonight representing Mark Vaines, who lives at and owns the house at 875 Northeast 130th Street, directly across the street from the proposed development. I will be followed in my presentation by an expert witness on planning, Mr. Chris Zangarelli, who also lives in the neighborhood, and by Mr. Joel Arguello, who is a real estate broker who sells homes in North Miami. And then I'll be followed by my client himself. So my client and many of his neighbors who are here tonight.
Okay. This changes the whole.
No, that was my.
No, hold on 1 second. Hold on.
Again, they're allowed because he's representing an affected party. This is someone who's definitely has a property right. You can limit it to whatever you'd like to limit. My understanding was there was Mr. Gibbs and then his client. I didn't realize. I must have missed.
I had two experts.
Okay, you may have said it. I didn't hear it. So you can limit to whatever you want on that. But so if you want to give them 10 minutes.
Well, no, you say you want a total of 15.
That's right.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. No. I'm sorry. Let him have his time, please, so we can continue. You can always give Borrell afterward.
You just need to make an objection on the record, sir.
Oh, okay.
Counsel can tell you.
We'd have to get that on the microphone because otherwise it's not being recorded.
With all deference to Mr. Gibbs, who's a great attorney, I need to object on the record to the presentation of expert testimony when we have not been provided with any copies of any expert reports for our review. We should have a right to review those. Our expert reports were all filed with the city and available for review, and I'm just required, I don't want to disrupt, but I must make my objection on the record to the introduction of expert testimony that was not furnished to us. Thank you.
Fully noted.
And just so my response is very simple, that this is testimony, not reports. That's all it is testimony.
Go ahead.
Okay, my client and many of his neighbors are here tonight to object to the conditional use application. It will introduce into their well-established and stable single-family neighborhood an out-of-scale, massive 67-unit that is in dimensions on the ground 314 feet in length along 130th Street and 92 feet going north and south. That is going up 6 stories. That will alter their single-family neighborhood forever. And maybe that's good for some people, but for the people in my neighborhood, it is not. Let's take a look at this neighborhood, if I can. This neighborhood, this is the neighborhood right here, and you'll see these tabs here that are in green. All the green tabs are home-owned. Those are homes, and the ones that have H are homesteaded properties. That means people live in these houses and own these houses. There are 2 houses that are not homesteaded, where the owner probably doesn't live. Here and here, and I think that's it. Then we have the church on the west, and we have this property, lot 12, is a property that is a business. This is a stable. You can say there are houses that were bought, the last time they were bought was 1974. You've got houses built in the 80s. You get houses built in the 90s. These are people people who bought these houses in the 80s and 90s and into the early 2000s. This is a stable neighborhood. Okay. Excuse me. According to the zoning code, the purpose of a conditional use, because that's what you're voting on tonight. You're voting on a conditional use, is to recognize that there are uses which may have beneficial effects and serve important public interests, but may also have adverse effects on the environment or would change the desired character of the area. Conditional uses require individual review, and that's what you're doing tonight. And the review process allows the imposition of conditions to mitigate their impacts or the denial of the application if the impacts cannot be mitigated. And that is our position tonight, that these impacts cannot be mitigated. And you have, the law says, your code says you have the right to say no. Allowing this intense and incompatible 67 units, 374 foot by 92 foot, 6-story condominium will have such negative impacts on the surrounding stable single-family neighborhood that it warrants the denial. The zoning code in section 4305 requires that the conditional use application complies with 10 standards. This application fails to comply with 4 of those 10 standards. Your code says it has to meet all 10 standards. Standard 5 requires the project to be compatible with the condition and the development of adjacent uses, buildings, and structures, and will not adversely affect those adjacent uses, buildings, and structures. A development that introduces this massive, massive building into this neighborhood of 1-story single-family houses is not compatible with the adjacent uses, buildings, and structures that are there. Approving the conditional use application does not protect this neighborhood. Instead, it adds an intensity, massing, and scale of development that has no relationship to its surrounding built environment of single-family homes. Standard 7 requires the use will not have an adverse impact on the livability, value, and development of adjacent properties. Again, this is a stable single-family neighborhood. The use as permitted by the approval tonight would tower over its single-family neighbors, impacting the neighbor's privacy, and quiet enjoyment of their property. This use will destabilize the existing single-family neighborhood by its introduction of this massive, out-of-scale building. The increased density of this use means increased noise, dust, light, and negatively impacting the surrounded area. Standard 8 requires that the nature of the proposed development is not detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. This large development will have an adverse impact on that by taking a stable, well-established single-family neighborhood with long-term home ownership and introducing an incompatible multifamily use to an extent permitted nowhere else in the city unless you're in the NRO. This will give rise to a less stable, less safe because of increased traffic and density, and less valuable single-family home neighborhood adjacent to a multifamily development. What? Oh my God, there's no quorum.
Yeah, you're correct. You're
You know
correct.
what?
We are
Excuse me.
without a majority of the council on the dais. We are now in the mayor's
Now
back
we
on the
are.
dais.
Okay. It doesn't matter because I'm establishing a record. That's what I'm doing. I understand that. Excuse me, my time is ticking. Standard 8 requires that the nature is not detrimental to public health, safety, and welfare. I already talked about that. And Standard 9 requires that the design and function of this project enhances the character of the immediate vicinity of the parcel proposed for development. Because of the massive size, height, and density of this development, with increased traffic, increased noise and light, the character and urban fabric of this single-family neighborhood will be changed. The proposed project, which is only allowed at its height and density because of this conditional use application, that's the only reason why it's this big, does not meet all the requirements for a conditional use. The bonuses requested through the conditional use will allow for this massive out-of-scale development within this incredibly low-density existing neighborhood. Listen to the neighbors as they speak tonight. All they want is to be able to continue to live in their single-family neighborhood without the prospect of a large, dense, out-of-character, multifamily project being developed in their midst. One last comment. Consider 314 feet going up 6 stories next to you, and decide if you want to live across the street from that, behind it, or on the side of it. That's what we're confronted with. Please deny the conditional use application and protect this neighborhood. And Mr. Zangrilli,
Good evening. My name is Chris Zangrilli. I live at 875 Northeast 127th Street, right down the block from this. I'm a professional city planner. I have a master's degree. I used to work for the city of Miami, and now I work in private practice. And I'll be brief. I know there's a lot of people here, and I just want to go on record and say, in my 10 years as an urban planner, I have never seen anything like this. This goes against every tenet of sound urban planning that they teach and that is practiced throughout the country. You're essentially throwing away your zoning code through this NRO. Now, if this is without a doubt spot zoning, you are taking an R2 lot, single-family zone lot, and you're essentially putting high-density multifamily without so much as a zoning change, which requires 2 public hearings and a supermajority from you guys. Now, this is, I think, 10 times the density that's allowed on this site, surrounded by single-family homes. That's the reason we have zoning codes, is to prevent this from happening. The NRO treats the R2 within its boundaries the same as it treats West Dixie, as it treats 125th Street. You guys have to revisit this NRO and look at the LDRs and amend them. It's not one size fits all for everything within there. You have to protect the single-family homes. I'll talk briefly about the staff report. As a professional planner, it is totally inaccurate. They are making things up just to make those standards that are needed. You need to ask the questions to them, justify how this blends in and is compatible with the surrounding structures and single-family homes. How can you say a 6-story, 67-unit, 120 parking spaces is compatible with the existing structures that are around it? You don't need to be a professional to see that that is incorrect. They also say it will not adversely impact the use, livability, and value of the adjacent single-family properties. Again, justify that stance. How is this not going to adversely impact the livability when you have a 67-unit building next to you with 120 parking spaces? Thirdly, it will not adversely impact the public health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood. You guys, it's a dead-end street from 130th over to West Dixie. All the traffic will be going up 9th Avenue and from the east on 130th. If you're telling me that's not going to adversely impact the traffic, noise, and livability of that neighborhood, so be it, but justify your stance. The letter of intent and the staff report, the letter of intent submitted by the developer and the staff report are almost verbatim. It's like they took the letter of intent and it's verbatim. It's exactly what they're saying. I think if you approve this, it will be challenged in court, and I think it'll be an embarrassment and a black eye for the city of North Miami. This is spot zoning. If it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, and it walks like a duck, it's a duck, and this is spot zoning. You are taking an R2 single-family zone and putting high-density multifamily on it without so much as a zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, y'all hold your applauses. We do not need anybody to applaud. This is not a show, I repeat. Okay? This is the last I'm going to say it. Okay? This is the last time.
Mr. Mayor, Council, my name is Joel Arguello with Alpha Realty Group. I am a real estate broker as of 2013, and more importantly, I'm a resident here in North Miami. I used to reside at 1300 Northeast 135th Street. Today I stand before you to stress the importance of preventing the potential issues that these property owners will experience from this development. When considering the effects of a 6-story, 67-unit development, let us not forget the collateral damage that will be felt by these hard-working families who have come to call this area home. Commercial residential buildings such as the one proposed expose the neighborhood to community long-term planning challenges that may on some items be simply misunderstood. These challenges will cause damages that will be felt. These damages can include, but will not be limited to, overcrowding, noise, and dissolvement of the community. In addition, neighborhood revitalization, which, as we all know, North Miami took a little bit of a hit in the most recent boom and bust, that we will be sabotaged for future generations. For the first time in 10 years, we're finally seeing property values and homes selling in the 200s to 300s, and having this 67-unit building be put there, it's definitely going to take us a step back. Economically, an issue residents should be aware of is that this market just may respond to a development of this magnitude by reducing prices of existing dwellings as a result of increased supply. This is a long-term core issue. A vast majority of people in this community invest some kind of finances in their homes, and they expect to be given the same opportunity for return in the market as any other neighborhood of this caliber. The stunt of growth continues when considering this negative demographic as it has that it will potentially attract. We're talking about 1 1s or 2 2s between 750 to 950 square feet. We're not going to have single families living in there. We're going to have small, this is going to be a young community. There are going to be disturbance there. I mean, they mentioned bike racks, but even so, we've got the Lime bikes that have just recently become prevalent, and they're all over the neighborhood. I mean, I lived on 135th Street and 13th Avenue, and every time I came outside of my house in the past couple months, I had these bikes that were there that were simply a nuisance. Moreover, local services will also feel the effects of this development. With increased volume comes increased pressure on local services. The increased pressure will be felt by the community, and unfortunately, we may have to settle for less adequate services. The risk of spreading this means local services are going to be simply too thin. There will be increased pressure on infrastructure. We're talking a 2-lane street with an additional 120 parking spaces comes 120 cars. I mean, I could just imagine what 130th Street is going to look like once it's there. Same thing with 9th Avenue. The density issues and overcrowding spillover effects this development may expose to the community is not something that should be overlooked. Because of these reasons, I stand with the families and communities and their best interests. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Ivanis. I reside at 875 Northeast 130th Street. Besides representing myself this evening, I also represent approximately 120 of my surrounding neighbors in Ironsgate Manor, which I've personally spoken to and developed a relationship with over the past 4 months. I want to talk a little bit about what's been said tonight and go over a few points. First, let's start at the beginning and maybe some of the forefathers of the city and of this county when they developed the zoning and developed these neighborhoods. North Miami is at the end of a very historic district with old growth oak trees that have started in the El Portal area and end at our beautiful Enchanted Forest. This neighborhood is really the gem of North Miami and has not only fostered great families living there, but pride and ownership. What's being proposed is going in the opposite direction of everything that the city is built on. Getting closer and into the 70s and 80s, North Miami started granting some of these larger apartment complexes, and you'll see them along Dixie Highway, you'll see them across from the high school. They're smaller in comparison to this project, but when you look at the apartment these complexes in the same regards as to what is done to the neighborhood across the street, these are scabs in North Miami. The houses across the street borderline on being, I'm sorry for the people that live there, but they're destroyed from the outside in because of the amount of traffic and the swale parking, which the councilor thinks that this is going to help. So I'm asking you, and I'm imploring you, and I'm sorry. I see you guys are very bored. We weren't able to have the pleasure of having to meet with you for hours. So we'd appreciate your attention for just a few minutes because we have our whole life invested in our home. So I would just ask you to make a decision. If you lived across the street from this project or this potential project, or your son or your daughter was going to start a family across the street from this project or owned a home, would you vote for this to proceed? I think your answer is no, so I ask that you please vote no, and
Thank you very much.
thank you very much.
Okay, this time we will open the item for public comment. Anyone in the, well, actually not anyone, whoever had stood up a while ago doing swearing, huh? No, the people who actually swore, huh? Only the people who actually, huh? No, we already did that. I got their pictures. So everybody is allowed 2 minutes to please comment and voice their opinions on the item, please. Go ahead. On the left, yeah. You first, go ahead.
Richard Anise, 13030 Northeast 10th Avenue, and I was sworn in. These people came to the first zoning, commission meeting, planning commission meeting about 3 months ago. They started with a request for 90 units with not enough, with like 5 guest spaces, tandem parking. I didn't make the last meeting, but they didn't change the footprint of the building. They haven't added parking under the building or on one of the floors. And now they're talking about reducing the units, but also having 96 parking spaces, which is impossible. The reason they're getting the bonus units are a joke. The client overpaid for this property because he came to the city and found the NRO, and then he decided that he would be able to make money out of doing this, which he can't. There's a reason why this would be the first use of these 2,500 units in 10 years, because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't pass this sense test. And this developer said that, or Mr. Valens said, and the representative of the developer, that he would do pre-sale, and if he couldn't sell at least 50% of the units, he wouldn't even put a shovel in the ground. So if you even think about giving him an approval for this, you need to put that kind of a restriction in there, because if you don't, he's going to end up renting out the other half of the units that he doesn't sell, and he's going to be on the board. You won't have a board. If he doesn't sell 50% of the units, he's never going to turn it over, and it will become Section 8 housing. And if you think that you're going to get $250,000 for a 757 square foot one-bedroom apartment, you got pipe dreams. So it just doesn't make common sense.
Thank you.
Before I begin, may I enter something into the record? I have a copy from Mr. Geller as well. Tanjum Jose, 900 Northeast 129th.
Let him go ahead, because it's being timed. The time is rolling.
Oh, thanks for that. Tanjum Jose, 900 Northeast 129th Street. I live in the little greenhouse at the corner of 9th Avenue and 129th Street. I believe some of you may have seen it on your Saturday bike rides. It's always nice to see you in the neighborhood. Now, what previous speakers have said, what our council has said, what my fellow neighbors will continue to say is, why do we like this community? Not just because it's residential and relatively affordable, mind you, but we're well educated. We're amenable to our neighbors. We enjoy amenities. We like our proximity, walking distance to places like Mocha, Cafe Creme. We love Sushi Lucy. We love Ricky Tai. We love our neighborhood. Arch Creek East, Great Preserve. We have a sense of community. Look just what happened to us after Irma. We came together as a community and we've continued to remain so. What everybody here is speaking about is the character of our neighborhood. I, for one, thought we'd be the next Miami Shores. Now we're talking about LDRs, about NROs, and development. Today you were presented a straw man argument by Council Mr. Geller about how they're not so bad. It's not as big as it could be. That council people, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, that's what some people would call alternative facts. Today we're talking about general issues like traffic, crime, environmental degradation, negative impacts of property values. But again, today we are all talking about the character of our neighborhood. Your own NRO future land use elements legally require you to justify, it's for city staff to justify a lot of these things, and they do not. We want to live in North Miami, not in Hialeah. There's nothing wrong with being a bedroom community, as some might argue. Look at places like El Portal, Biscayne Park, so on and so forth. Again, consider the character of our neighborhood in your future land use elements when you consider this item for a conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would highly recommend that we do not compare us to other cities, especially in a negative way, because it's you're stigmatizing other cities now, and it is not a good thing to do. No.
Have I heard positive? Hi, my name is Jessica Martinez. I live in 933 Northeast 127. As I say, I live in North Miami for 14 years. I'm a proud citizen, and I love to live in our cities. I have especially concern now with clarification of the councilor here about talking about how many spaces or cars are going to be extra in our streets. I just want to let you know I live exactly 3 blocks from this development, and for your record, you guys know that you live 5 blocks from where this building is going to be. If you put it in perspective, I would like to know if it was being a study on what the consequences of having extra 200 vehicles transit in our street, which is 5 blocks from our city. I mean, you guys gonna get caught on that traffic. I bet you have been caught in the traffic right now on 125th Street. I would guess at 3 o'clock, it's impossible to transit sometimes. City of North Miami, as you know, you have to go to other cities. You have to cross our city to go to Bar Harbor. So considering, I'd like you to consider this is 5 blocks from 125th Street. It will add more traffic to our city. It will be impossible to transit. Consider again also that 130th Street is one-way street. How are they going to convert that to a 2-way street? I don't know if you have crossed by. It's West Dixie, and 130 is one-way street. That means that cars are going to go through our houses to come through here through 125th, not only to a West Dixie or 6th Avenue, they're going to go through our neighbor. 200 more cars transit our street. It's going to be a nightmare. Thank you very much. I hope you consider and I'm strongly opposed to this development of this building. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, Council. My name is Stephanie St. Julian. I used to be a volunteer for you guys for years. My face should be familiar. More about me, I'm 26 years old. My family has lived in City of North Miami for over 20 years. Our home is at 875 Northeast 129th Street, which is directly behind this building. I'm up here to say what happens to the trash? What happens to the dumping? What happens to the traffic when traffic does go, because it is on a one-way street? How is that going to be reconstructed? How is the wall? How are you guys going to ensure our privacy in the back of our homes, ensure that nothing doesn't get stolen? How do you ensure that we can have our family barbecues that we normally have every Sunday without nobody looking in our backyard from that 12-story or 10-story tall building, without anybody looking down and being like, okay, well, what they doing back there, or taking anything from them? How are you guys going to ensure that privacy from us? How are you guys going to keep us safe? You don't understand how hard it makes me feel, because before I could stand in my area and look across from West Dixie off of 125th and see the drama that goes on 6th Avenue. It's like you guys are bringing the chaos that's out there back into the residential area, even though it's all in the same, but you guys don't take into consideration those values. Being that I have a child myself, I'm running on time, but even though I have a child myself, I do understand that what happens to that now? You don't know who you're renting to, you don't know who you're selling the condos to. You can sell those condos, but you cannot stop those people from renting out those condos. You cannot stop visitors that come from different places that come and visit. What happens to parking? You can say how you're gonna put in all this parking, la, 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 but what happens to the parking? We still don't see maps of what parking would be. Please, you guys, speak for us. Thank you.
Next.
Good evening. My name is Michael Brown. I live at 895 Northeast 129th Street. I'm Stephanie's neighbor. I will be on the south side of this building, right on that block. I have 2 8-year-old twins who I am concerned about my family's privacy and safety with this monstrosity of a building going right in our backyard. In the NRO, it states that the goal is to encourage redevelopment that does not mar the urban fabric of the city, as well as the harmony and character of the existing neighborhoods. A 6-story building definitely mars the fabric of this city and the harmony and character when it's all residential 1-story homes. A 6-story building is out of character. It comes with many problems, which we've already discussed: the parking, the traffic. Northeast 10th Avenue was closed several years back. Our traffic has increased immensely on 9th Avenue. That's where my driveway empties out to. The traffic study that was sent to the staff and approved, I strongly disagree with, and I'm not sure how. They said it was looked at by an outside company, but it seems awfully unattainable, the limited number of traffic they saw coming with that. The attorney and architects say they want to work with the people of the community, and, you know, they put up pictures of these beautiful green fences. That green fence isn't going to stop the 4th, 5th, 6th floor, all those apartments looking directly into my backyard. You know, putting up a couple trees, that doesn't help. As a citizen of the city of North Miami, I feel like we were completely let down by the city planner, who is no longer with us, as I've been told, as well as the city staff. I hope that as you, as our elected representatives, will do what is right for the people of North Miami and deny this project. Thank you.
My name is Eddie Rodriguez. I live at 13075 Northeast 4th Avenue. And not that long ago, I moved to North Miami. What drove me to this area was the quiet neighborhood, a sense of community, where neighbors know and are friends with one another, where kids can play outside without excessive traffic emerging and endangering them. But this beautiful utopia that we have right now is about to be disrupted for some of my neighbors in my community by the project that's being built at said address. In life, there's always a time and a place for everything, and this is not the time, nor definitely is not the place for redefining our zoning laws against the wishes of everyone who lives in that neighborhood and against the wishes of everyone else in North Miami. I said this planned build is setting a dangerous precedence for the rest of the residents of North Miami and its community. I said my greatest fear is that one day it won't be a neighborhood close to me, but be a house right or a lot directly next to my house. I spent a lifetime to achieve a dream of owning a home, and I chose North Miami to do that. And that dream is now turning into a nightmare for some few people that live in this community with me. Said, what's to stop the people that buy these buildings, that buy these units, then turning around and renting it out to Airbnb on a regular basis to cover the mortgage? What's to stop these people to turn around and renting these units to other people who, with no background checks, no kind of, you know, fail safes or anything, you could be renting to a murderer or a thief or a drug dealer or a pimp with a whole bunch of prostitutes. You have no idea. These are fail safes that we want in our community to assure us that we're going to be safe when we live there. I said, and to address, I hear all this about parking and parking and parking, and we're adding spots and whatnot. Have they ever given to the dot during the holidays? So we got, let's say, I just did a little bit of math while they were talking. We got 67 units, and let's say each person during the holidays brings in an additional 4 cars. That's 335 cars.
Thank you.
Think about that.
Good evening. My name is Vashti Leon, and I'm a resident of North Miami whose property is directly behind the development that's being proposed. I live at 865 Northeast 129th Street in North Miami. And I'm so happy to see my neighbors coming forward with their feelings about this development. As beautiful as this building is, it's too big. It's too much. I have grandchildren who come and they're in the backyard playing. The oak trees provide a natural barrier behind our homes. The thought of those trees coming down. I've lived in this home for almost 25 years, so North Miami is my home. I'm one of those homeowners who's been there many years, and I know the community. I've seen it grow. You hear a lot here tonight about the character and the personality and the camaraderie that we all have as neighbors. And that's one of the reasons that I chose to remain in North Miami. I like the community. I like how it is. I like the privacy. The development, I know development has to come at some point, and growth, but I think you need to consider this community, and what's beautiful about it is the character that it has. And to try not to lose that, to fight for that, for us, for the community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Alina Medina, and I live at 1270 Northeast 124th Street. And I'm here to support the residents that live in the area, 130th Street. I went there and I looked at the area and met the neighbors. And I feel for them, for what is going to be developing and coming up in that area. So I want to also conserve the ambience, the atmosphere that North Miami has. I want it to grow, but in consideration of us, the residents. I feel that we, the residents that live here, are not being represented, and that the NRO needs to be really dismantled and reorganized. We know really also who lives here, who really lives here, and I think you all know who lives here and who really cares for this city. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
John Chisholm. I live at 850 Northeast 123rd Street. I used to live at 830 128th Street. Somewhere along this process, there should be somebody who considers whether a project is appropriate for the neighborhood in which it's proposed to be built, and not merely consider whether the project exceeds the most extreme limits of what's allowed by code. This particular project that the developer wants would shoehorn a 6-story condo apartment building into a lot that is completely surrounded by single-story, single-family residents. Yeah, the developer is talking about putting ivy on a concrete wall, landscaping, and some other cosmetics, but there's no getting around the fact that a big, tall building is totally out of character with the already existing properties, and it would stick out like a sore thumb, degrading the single-family residence character of the neighborhood. It was so obviously out of character for the neighborhood that when the matter was before the Planning Commission, comments were made during the discussion among the commissioners that even though the project really doesn't fit within the existing neighborhood, that it was necessary for the Planning Commission to recommend the project's approval because the project didn't exceed the maximum allowable parameters. There were nods of agreement and no objections or corrections or clarifications made to that comment among the other planning commissioners. Since the Planning Commission did not take on the responsibility of weighing in on being the ones to judge whether the project really fits into the character of the neighborhood, apparently it falls entirely upon you, the City Commission, to make that judgment. Don't just abdicate your responsibility by saying, well, the Planning Commission said it was okay. The developer and his representatives will keep hammering on the point that the project is well within the upper limits allowable. But like I said at the beginning, somebody should consider whether this project, looming over its neighbors, is appropriate for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Juliana Bage. I was sworn in. I reside at 910 Northeast 130th Street. I have lived in the city since 1979. I am in favor of development and know it is a need for the city to grow, but it must be smart development. I would like to see infrastructure improvement to come first, such as a train station, before urban development occurs. That the main concern I have for this development is parking. Since we are still a sprawling community where everyone has one or more vehicles, and they drive everywhere wherever they go. Homeowners are responsible for the swell, and only 2 cars are allowed to park on the swells, from what I understand with code enforcement, which is designed for drainage and extra parking, not primary parking. Who will keep the condo building from using the swells as extra guest parking, and who will be responsible for their upkeep if the building uses them more than the residents do? I live directly across the street from this building that's coming. I can shake hands with anybody on the balcony. And I really do worry about the multi-car situation. My husband is in a wheelchair. It is important that he has a parking place when he comes home so he can get into the house and not have to park perhaps a half a block down the street or a block. Living right on the corner, that's the first place they will look guest parking to park their vehicles and go across the street. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Vicente Cedre. I live at 12755 Northeast 9th Avenue, block and a half from where the project is going to be. I've lived in my house since 1997. I've always been a proud owner of North Miami. love my area. Today, I'm even prouder to see my community, my neighbors, which I haven't met most of them, but come to support our neighborhood and stand for our right and for what is best for our neighborhood. I live in the corner on 128th and 9th. I've had already 2 cars coming into my fence from the traffic. Not last November, but the November before, there was a car that crashed into my pickup truck that I have outside. So 9th Avenue does have already a lot of traffic, and this complex will make a lot more traffic. So please listen to the proud neighbors that we are, the neighborhood that we are in North Miami. And think of what we're asking for you. We're not asking for much. We're just asking to leave our neighborhood the way it is, safe and clean. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mauricio Pinilla. I'm living at 850 Northeast 129, basically on the back of this project. I'm here to ask you, please, listen to the community. We don't need any more buildings on the area. It's a single family residential area. I know the improvement of the city has to be something for the future, but you are doing already on Solemia, correct? It's a big project over there. We are doing a size, the same lot size. You have a project on 21st Street and 5th Avenue, Northeast. That's 20 townhouses building over there. You have another nice project building on 135th and 25th Avenue Northeast, townhouses too, just to keep the neighborhood looks like is now. That's the reason that a project of this size is not for this one. I understand that is part of the developing, but the development has to be, as they mentioned before, has to be according with the area. We don't need a big structure. And they talking about 120 cars on parking lot, but 67 units. How many birthdays are going to celebrate? How many parties? Once a week? Once a month? No. That's a lot of traffic on that areas. I live in front of the church, and you have to see how many cars cross the parking lot from the church at high speed at any time. I have been seeing even sometimes police cars parking there because it's not a way to cross a private parking lot just to make a car shot on the traffic. And basically, there are no residents of the area. So please say no to this project. Thank you.
Rob Borden. I live at 890 Northeast 129th Street. I'm 48 years old, born and raised in that house. The house was built by my great-grandparents. You talk about moral character. I point out to where I go back, I hearken to the hurricane. We had the hurricane, this past hurricane. Neighbors came together in a block, up and down the block, walk door to door, who needs help? A building like this is what it's going to tear apart our moral fabric of our community. Great neighbors, Mike Brown, Tangem. I've won a beautification award for my property. I get comments left and right. If you want to chase people out, good people like me, that I've lived for all my life, I'm proud of the city. I'm not proud of standing here having to do this. A building like this doesn't belong. You're just going to chase good people out of the city. I'll leave with this. It was pointed out at the first Planning Commission that the NRO, there's holes in the NRO. The NRO on surface is intended, to add density. It doesn't belong in the residential area. I don't care how close to Dixie Highway it is. It just doesn't belong. There's holes in the NRO. Do the right thing. Revisit the NRO, make amendments to it, change it. It doesn't belong in our community. One last thing. We haven't really talked on crime. My house was broken into 3 weeks ago. My next door neighbor, 6 months ago. My other neighbor, 6 months more than that. With more density comes more people, more crime. Again, listen to what the people in the community have said. A building of this magnitude and size does not belong here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ileana Albarran, and I live in 849 Northeast 121st Street. I agree with my neighbor. The NRO has flaws in it. It has the downtown area where these residents live. It has a residential feel to it. The neighbors have worked very hard to bring up their property values so that they can pay higher taxes so that we can support the city staff. And the solution is to bring a huge development in that will bring the property values of the surrounding areas down so that then the neighbors are forced to sell their houses so that big developers can come and buy blocks to bring in height and new residents. It is just so disrespectful to the current residents who've, again, worked so hard to bring their property values up, and we need to respect their hard work, and we need to make changes to the NRO so that we protect the residents who've worked, again, so hard to bring up their property values up so that we can afford the salaries of our city staff. Thank you.
Good evening. I arrived late, so I was not sworn in. But my name is John Lassiter.
You can't, unless you want to swear him in, I'll allow it.
Anybody else?
Anyone else?
Anybody
Yeah,
else?
Well, it's up to you guys. Okay, so if you don't want to do it, then that's fine.
No,
Okay.
I'm fine with swearing him in, but I'm just saying, anybody else
Anyone
who needs to be
else
sworn
needs to
in.
be doing that right now.
So we don't do it on a one.
This is the last time that we're doing the swearing. So anyone?
sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I do.
That's somebody else.
That's it.
Good evening.
This is it.
My parents moved into North Miami, 129th and Northeast 10th in 1947. I grew up 1962, 129th and Northeast 10th. My parents have now left, but I run a mom and papa plumbing business at 865 Northeast 130th Street. So basically right across the street. And I've been looking at that lot for a long time and just wondering what was going to happen. I never expected this to happen, but it would definitely be a determining factor for us as a business owner to leave the area because of that type of building. I just don't think it's the right spot for it. I can picture other areas in North Miami, but I respect all my neighbors. They hardly know I'm there. I appreciate North Miami, and it's a quiet place. And I'm just afraid of the future as this, if this goes forward. And just don't think it's in the right spot. But appreciate your time. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the gentleman who just spoke, you didn't state your name and address at the top.
John Lassiter. My business is at 865 Northeast 130th Street.
Thank you, Mr. Lassiter.
Laura Hill, 13075 Griffin Boulevard. In fact, I've actually hired John Lassiter at my house for my plumbing needs. Thank you very much. I am so proud to see so many North Miami residents and homeowners standing up for themselves and the neighborhoods that they live in. I think one of the best things about this city is that we have a really engaged and smart and valuable community, and that's because we have solid neighborhoods. And I'm just very proud of them for standing up for themselves. And I really hope that our representatives who are supposed to represent the interests of the residents will listen to everybody and really stand by the residents and the homeowners to protect their beautiful neighborhoods, their investments, and their quality of life. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mary Schuweiler Hoover. I'm a 19-year North Miami resident, and I have owned my home for 17 years. My husband is a public school teacher in one of the area high schools, and I am here because I think that this and other developments like it that I see coming down the pipe as highly dangerous to the quality and fabric of our neighborhood and to its character, as well as detrimental to my property value and to the property value of so many people here. I am deeply troubled.
Your address, please.
Sure. I'm at 1070 Northeast 122 Street. I really want to encourage you folks not to abdicate your responsibility here. It is your responsibility. This buck stops with you, not with the planners who recommended this, but with you. And I have to say, I was so tired at the last meeting to hear over and over again, this is what the code allows. This is what we're allowed to do. Because one can does not mean that one should. That's a basic fundamental concept in morality. and in law and in anything reasonable, decent, and human. And I would encourage you folks to not abdicate your responsibility here. This development and developments like it are meant to get high density, shove as many units in as possible. It is going to destroy the fabric of these neighborhoods. North Miami is not, at this time, and I don't think that this area and this building, placed where it is, do not fit into the residential quality of this part of our community. There are parts of this community where this building might be well suited. This is not it. So I encourage you to take a hard look at the NRO, just because we've allowed it to become so bloated and so full of extra add-ons and extra units if you do this and if you do that. And then to have developers come and say, but your code allows it, does not make it right. So please, please take a step back. Bad development done cannot be undone. The price that this community will pay will be forever if you make this grave and serious mistake. So I encourage you, and I encourage your staff to do its job and to take a look at this and at developments like it and at our NRO, and to make sure that what you put forward fits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Iracema Pires, and I live in 810 Northeast 123rd Street. I'm just here and very proud, like everybody's saying, to see our community coming in front of you, to having you, all of you, listen to us. You were voted by us. We elected you. I believe your salary, we pay you because we believe you will be our voice. And every time that we come in here, like they're all saying, I don't want to be repeating the codes. Listen to us. What is in a paper doesn't mean it's going to be, and you all know a person can write a beautiful resume, might not deliver the job. In the paper, beautiful words, doesn't mean he's a good worker. Same thing with all that. Make believe it will fit. It will not. We depend on you to stop and think about and ask the right questions that have not been asked, which mainly parking. And two, privacy. Many areas in Memorial Highway, North Miami, all this can go and will be beautiful. It's still North Miami. So listen to us, not them. Listen to us. We voted for you, and we want you to be on our side, not against us. Thank you.
Hi, this is Marisol from 1270 Northeast 124th Street. I have to say that's one of the best beaches so far. I like that one. I want to follow it up. Some of the things that I thought would be cool to mention in this project is the availability of green walls to make things blend in nicer, because I know that they're probably going to get approved for at least some of this project, so that's a nice idea to add green living space so it looks like a lush landscaping versus a 7-story building or whatever height they're going to be approved for in total. Also, I think that in lieu of this NRO line, there are other areas that are registered as R6 that are perfect for projects like this, but they're limited because they're outside that NRO line. They're right next to buildings that are 7 stories, but they're restricted to 15 units, though they can go 11 stories high. Things like that should be looked at when we look for projects like that. Maybe they can get an exemption without having to go through all these zoning changes like everybody is exempt of within the NRO lines. Also, the LEED certifications that can go into projects like this, something that's bronze status can have a bike rack, and they're considered LEED certified now because they have a fancy bike rack, whereas we should always be looking for something that's platinum status, that better projects for everybody around them, as well as encouraging others to do the same, and improving the environment and architecture for creative designs. And I just fully support my fellow neighbors here in North Miami. We want to keep it beautiful as always, and projects like this, although the guys are really nice, don't quite match the neighborhood. So thank you guys.
Mr. Mayor, through you to the speaker who just spoke, she gave us our first name, but because there's a court record being taken and people watching at home,
My
the
name is
last
Marisol Medina.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
My name is Ron Platt. I'm at 391 Northeast 131st Street. I'm also a realtor. I've been a realtor for the last 15 years. I've sold many, many homes in this neighborhood. And I can tell you that given the past, we've made some bad decisions putting up apartment buildings in back of houses. I've had a hard time selling homes that where you step out to the backyard, there's a 5 or 6 story building looking down at the homeowner. What this really gets down to is tax dollars. It doesn't behoove the city to build homes versus 68 units. If we were to do a townhouse development on that block, or if we were to do single-family homes on that block, that wouldn't generate the tax revenue that 68 condos would, and I think that's what's influencing some of your decisions. I think also the Solomay project, where majority of that tax revenue that's going in is going to the CRA funds and not towards the infrastructures or towards us homeowners on the other side of the street. So I think if we had developed smart planning, such as putting new development on 125th Street or putting new development on West Dixie Highway, that would be a smarter resolution than trying to put a 6-story building in a local community. I know that I don't want to have a 6-story building in my neighborhood. I know that eventually I foresee these cul-de-sacs being taken over by developers and somehow getting the city to change that. I don't know. But basically, I'm going to repeat, it gets down to 68 units generating tax revenue for the city, and that's why I feel you're being swayed to do that versus doing single-family homes. Thank you.
My name is Bob Pichon, 13005 Coronado Terrace. I have followed these people through this process, which has been several planning commission meetings and just gatherings. And I was duly impressed by the sense of community. These people have been there for most of their lives. There's no HOA. They're people that just got together and formed a neighborhood. God bless them. And they're likely to get hit by a train wreck here shortly. I understand the code allows for this within the NRO, but I think we missed something when we developed that. Every place else in the city of North Miami, there's respect paid to the underlying zoning district. And there's one word in the comp plan that says outlying the NRO, where we still pay respect to the zoning of the transition from residential neighborhoods, be they single family or mixed use facilities. And we owe that to people. We got to fix that. They may be entitled, but it's not right. And I think this is a time to correct for the people of our city things that we're going to ruin their lives. And as the project goes forward, I know I'm running out of time, the parking is a big problem because we're in the middle of a residential neighborhood and these people are going to have to stare at this big building every day. And every car that can't park in that lot is going to park in front of their homes. And the way the applicant is counting parking spaces, the tandem parking, whether they're front to back or they're lift parking, those are dedicated parking spaces which deny the rest of the people in the building access to them. So I think they're short on the required parking they need. And then lastly, when we had this at the Planning Commission, there needs to be an agreement. This is a residential neighborhood, and there can be, if this goes forward, there can be no short-term rentals in this property. Because we can't let the people in the single-family homes do it, and this, we can't allow it in this either. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Jessica Alston, 1140 Northwest 125 Street. I stand today in support of my neighbors who are opposed to the approval of this project. I agree with them that our community, our suburban lifestyle should be preserved here in the city of North Miami. That our sense of community and character of our neighborhoods should be preserved in their neighborhood as well as mine, Sunkist Grove. Thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing is now closed.
Hi.
I'm sorry, where were you standing when we were doing the swearing? I don't see you in the swearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does that mean I can't speak?
That means you cannot speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
William Prevotel, 11950 North Bay Shore Drive. I stand in sympathy with many of the people that have spoke of the neighborhood, and I appreciate their many concerns and fears. I'd also like to extend appreciation to our the representing attorney who has acknowledged their fears and their concerns. and to the architectural firm who's done such a good job of trying to get more, accommodate more parking spaces off the street and onto the site. As I've done before, this will probably come close to getting me stoned in a hostile way, but I'd like to present some counterpoints to the arguments that have been presented. One being that this is probably in an area that has had little development. Our entire city has had little development in basically 50 years. 50 years of almost going nowhere and running in the same place. And I bet a lot of the people that spoke earlier who are aware of this situation or this particular not in my backyard incident probably aren't aware of the fact that we have a $120 million bond issue coming ahead of us. It's because we haven't done development and because we need new infrastructure and our city is crumbling. Just as many of the homes in this neighborhood and across the city are crumbling. And the mention of tax basis was mentioned. What was discussed earlier. From the few lots that were there to what will be there, from my calculations, over time you'll have tens of millions of dollars supporting you. On the other hand, and your common concerns, on the other hand, we could leave the entire city the way it is. We could have additional decay, and all of us could get more and more and more taxes put on us in the form of bonds or other taxes. How does that value your homes? If you're a renter, doesn't that get passed on to you as well? Please consider it. This is really not the worst thing ever, and it really has a great deal
Thank you
of
very
upside.
much.
Thank you.
All right.
William Previtel, 11950 North Bay Shore Drive. Thank you.
Now I'm going to leave it up to the council to decide whether they would allow anybody else to speak. Anyone who did not get sworn in, you will not be allowed to speak because we actually did it twice.
Yeah, I think that's enough.
No, I got the pictures here. He was not on there.
Okay.
I mean, it's up to you. I mean, I don't mind.
I say anybody who wants to speak, speak.
Let's swear him in.
Okay.
And that would include this young lady here if she was not sworn in.
Please hold your applauses. Please do. Please hold your applauses.
Okay, there's two more. Raise your right hands, please. Yes. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you very much. This is the last one.
Good,
Ladies
go ahead.
first?
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
You were waiting.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the council for letting me speak. My name is Eduardo Santos Lima. I live on, I'm the owner of 1030 Northeast 122nd Street. I would like to, first of all, I came here to support my neighbors, right? And then I bought this house in November 2015, and it's really a single home family area, right? And I'm so happy to be living here in North Miami, only 2 years, right? I have all my neighbors, all the ones that live besides me. When they leave, they give their keys for me, right? I go gardening with my neighbors. I go with my dog every day. I walk and I discuss with those people. I play with their kids. If I had a huge building at my side, who will go do my garden with me? With whom I will play with the kids? Who will know my dog by his name, right? I just would like you really to think about it. This is a home, family, single area. Please keep it at ease, right? Because I'm living only for 2 years here, and I would love to do all my life here because those neighbors are amazing. So thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Marcella Rucas, 2370 Northeast 135th Street, North Miami, Florida. I am here for several reasons. First, I'd like to congratulate Scott Galvin for all his wonderful work in DC, also for all his work on the preserve. I'm here in support of the preserve. I know you guys are already on board for that issue. My reason for coming here tonight is because of the Enchanted Forest. I think that it has been, is that not something I can address?
I'm sorry, but you cannot speak to that issue.
Okay, that's fine.
This is about a development issue on Northeast.
So only the development issue?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I will just say that I would never want to have a building right next to my residence. So I think you should do the right thing.
Okay, public hearing is not closed. What do we do, Mr. Attorney? Now,
Mr.
is it-
Geller has the opportunity to cross any witness or anyone who's made a statement.
Mr. Geller?
And he's able to make a rebuttal.
So, Mr. Mayor, through you to the city attorney, are you saying that any of the past 30 or 40 speakers we've just heard, Mr. Geller is open to cross-examine any of those?
No,
Can
only
you
the-
clarify then for me, please, what happens next?
Yes, he could. He's allowed under our code to cross-examine any witness.
Anybody who spoke
Any
tonight
made a
can now be
statement.
cross-examined?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.